listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Donovan Woods with the Fuels Institute, and I'm here with my guest.
Hi, I'm Britt with NACS.
And we are very happy to be here. And you know, Britt, we have a special guest that's going to be here with us talking about something you and I hate, congestion, traffic.
Traffic, my gosh, yeah. So Mr. Avery Ash is with us from INRIX. He's the head of autonomous mobility. And all right, I'm just going to jump right in with something that's pretty relatable, I think, to most people, is using Waze these days to get around. I live in Washington, D.C., and I commute to and from Virginia every day. And I literally get in my car, I hit Waze, and it might be 4 different types of routes that I could take to get to work every day and home. And just to kind of help set the stage of what you do and how that works, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Waze and the kinds of data that you provide to those types of services that help us all get around?
Yeah, absolutely. So INRIX is a global connected car company. We take billions of data points from 65 countries around the world. We combine that all into a suite of data services that helps to power many of the navigation apps that our listeners probably use every day. Waze is a great example where while the core of INRIX's business has been traffic for the past decade, we actually deliver parking information through Waze. So we provide information about where there are available parking spots as you reach your destination, recognizing that the key to busting congestion is not just about knowing which roads are the fastest or the slowest, but also making sure that people are getting to their destination in the fastest and most effective way. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good to navigate to your endpoint and then spend 15 minutes circling the block looking for parking. So we're looking to really try to unpack and to solve that trip challenge that is very, I'm sure, identifiable to most of our members here today, and that we've been working to try to solve and alleviate for the better part of the last decade.
I like that, busting congestion. I feel like that could be your marketing tagline. INRIX.
We have done a little bit of work around congestion busters. Yep.
Yeah, I like that. And parking spots, of course. I mean,
Yep.
you know, it's the to and from work, and then trying to find a place to put your car.
Once you're there. Correct. You know, Avery,
Yep.
we worked together in your past life with AAA, with the Fuels Institute, and it seems like you always seem to find these companies that have a touch of why the consumer should care. Now, with INRIX, that's INRIX, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So with INRIX, do you guys actually have a personal app that consumers can actually use, or is this more something that, let's say, automobile or we call them manufacturers or someone from that side would take advantage of it? Who's it really for?
So we do have a consumer-facing app that will show you travel times. You can adjust it by time of day. You can look at congestion and traffic points over a route. But the core of our business is really providing the underlying data that powers navigation systems in all sorts of different applications, from the center stack in a vehicle up to the apps that you might have on your smartphone or tablet.
Got you. That makes sense. And it's funny because before you actually joined INRIX, I had never heard of the company. But then this morning, literally as we're recording, our colleague, Carolyn Schneer, texted me or emailed me and showed me a screenshot from her local news channel. And at the top of the traffic report was a big INRIX logo. So maybe it was there all the time and I never noticed it, but you guys are definitely picking up traction now. You've been around for more than 5 years. You're about a decade old, right?
Yep, that's right. And I think that's a great application of the sorts of data we have, where there's one side that's actually helping you in your navigation process, but before you leave the house in the morning, knowing what to expect for your travel time is really important for that planning process, so that you can actually be prepared before you get in the road, that the commute that normally takes you 30 minutes is going to take you 50 minutes today. And one of the additional pieces of insight that INRIX is able to provide is actually, why is it taking so much longer today? To tell you about the incidents that are on your route. We use a mix of machine learning and human curation to actually identify what those challenge points on the road might be, why that commute's taking longer. And we deliver that sort of information to both end users, so drivers, but we also work a lot with cities, states, federal departments of transportation to help them understand and manage their networks in real time as well.
And I find it interesting that you've got data points in 65 countries that kind of help power these navigation apps. Does that mean that you have offices all over the world, or is it really headquartered over here and you just have your connections out there? I mean, you're helping people in France get around, or you're helping people in China get around too. Is that true?
So we have U.S. and European offices, and then we have staff in Australasia as well. The bulk of our staff, though, are split between our headquarters is in Kirkland, Washington. And then we have teams in Santa Monica, in a couple of different offices in the UK, and then on mainland Europe as well.
All right, very cool.
So you mentioned all those different places, and I looked at the website a couple of days ago, and I love the infographic you have on just looking at the United States and where the most congestion is found. I was sad to see that the DC area was in the top 2. We were number 2, actually behind
number
Boston.
2.
No,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, that was painful to see. Why would INRIX, or how could INRIX help with urban planners, or maybe even when it comes to just anything with logistics? How could INRIX help with city planning in the future?
Well, and the first part of a city or of a regional transportation commission or a state trying to unpack and unlock that mobility challenge is understanding how people and how vehicles are using the road networks today. So what we're able to provide is both real-time information, which might be useful if you're actually driving today, but also all of this historical data and analytics about where there are pinch points within a road network, what the impact of a project has been. So if you're putting in a bike lane or you're putting in a new lane for traffic, what has the ultimate impact been? Has that actually alleviated or increased congestion? And rather than having to rely on anecdotal sort of pieces or outreach from constituents, or as we had in the past, somebody actually goes and stands on that street corner with a clicker, or you roll out a tube to try to count cars. We can provide that sort of really granular data and analytics that helps cities to make smarter decisions about where and how they invest their limited resources and for what purpose. And then on the backside, to actually measure, have you been successful?
That's really, I'm really interested in how this all comes together. Curious about the parking spots. I mean, because I use Waze so often, understanding a route and, how information that people are actually adding to the app is also helping the greater good. How do the parking spots work? Are you partnered with garages and you know exactly how many spots are available, or is it actually spots on the street that are open? Can you tell me more about that?
Both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So we do both on-street and off-street parking. INRIX acquired a company 4 years prior to my time called ParkMe, which is now INRIX Parking.
ParkMe, which is now INRIX Parking.
Yep.
Okay,
so
cool.
Now it's INRIX Parking, and we deliver that sort of that mix of static data, so things like prices and locations, as well as availability to drivers as they near their destination. Donovan mentioned back from my AAA days, the survey data, whether you're at INRIX or AAA, shows the same thing, which is parking is one, if not the biggest pain point for many drivers.
Absolutely.
It's really frustrating. I live here in Washington, D.C. to spend, to drive 10 minutes, only to spend 15 minutes looking for a parking space.
I think that's why Uber is so popular. I will literally take Uber instead so I don't have to deal.
Right.
Well, and we've actually seen some of the survey data bearing that out recently with TNCs of why people are using ride-hailing services. And one of the big reasons is parking is expensive and it's a pain. So what we offer is a solution that tries to make that parking experience a little bit better. So we provide both information about where there is parking, sometimes based on real-time availability. But what we found is that real-time information that there is one open parking space on a block that's 5 blocks away in downtown DC is essentially useless. By the time you're going to get there, you know that it's already gone. So instead, what we do is we crunch all of this historical information we have about availability to provide you a prediction about, based on this time of day of the week, these environmental conditions, the highest likelihood you have of finding parking is taking a set route or looking at particular blocks. So if I turn right here, I have a 60% chance of finding parking. If I turn left, I've got a 90% chance.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a lot more detailed than I expected. I just thought there were sensors everywhere. And
right.
Man, okay. So, all right, well, let me transition a little bit because that would help Britt and I and probably a lot of our listeners in those urban areas, your service. But for fuel retailers, I have 2 questions. For fuel retailers and also something you mentioned about last mile, especially with your title as head of autonomous mobility. But I'll start with the retailers first. I'm thinking about when they're planning a new site and they're wondering, where should we go? I know they do a lot of planning and they do a lot of research on that. Could INRIX and what you provide actually help them to decide traffic patterns, what makes more sense, which site they should actually select? Do you work with any type of retailer with that? And could fuel retailers actually benefit from your service?
So I will promise the listeners that you are not on the INRIX enterprise sales team, but that is one of the primary sales channels we have in enterprise is site selection. So we have all this information about where and how people move, volumes of traffic, that many retailers, not just fuel providers, leverage when making decisions about placing a new store location. And what we're finding is that as you're able to get more granular with that data, in the same way that a city can make better decisions with about their assets, the private sector and retailers can make similarly better decisions with better data about what they can expect for demand and traffic for a given location.
I think that would be beneficial. I think our retailers could actually, and before I wait until the end of the session to find out and people are hearing the music play, where would our retailers actually reach out? Is it to you or is there a specific link?
No, so we actually partner with a handful of different site selection operators. Zeus, a great example of that. But we use all of our underlying data to power some of those services.
Okay, perfect. And I want to go back again. The last thing specifically, because I know you work in autonomous mobility, we still talk about it. When John Eichberger, our executive director, goes out and speaks, people still ask about AVs as well as EVs. But now heavy duty is where we think it'll actually start off first, especially when it comes to, across country and then getting to that last mile. When you talk about last mile and you talk about what your service provides, how does someone like a UPS or an Amazon Prime or FedEx, how do they benefit from using your service or the data that would be there in terms of routes and which way to go?
Well, particularly with those sorts of applications, so first and last mile urban delivery, many of those sorts of players that you outlined are already using INRIX data to shave time and save money off of their delivery, plan better routes, a better understanding of real-time travel times, congestion, incidents, road weather, and understanding the curb space as well. So, part of understanding parking is understanding where there might be availability to pull over and make a pickup or drop off, whether you're a TNC or a delivery vehicle.
This is all real. I'm actually kind of floored right now. This is all really interesting stuff. And it makes me want to ask you, can you look into your crystal ball and kind of tell us what's on the horizon? Like, where do we go from here? Is there any cool stuff that's coming down towards us? Like, what do you see happening from here?
Yeah, I think some of the big trends that we're seeing right now are kind of the realization and the rationalization of some of the kind of the big splashy, exciting trends that we've heard about for a handful of years. So, one of those would be automated vehicles. We've heard a lot about them for a number of years. I first started working on automated vehicle policy and consumer education in 2010. So we're getting on a decade now. And we're really only, though, just now beginning to see the reality check of what these vehicles can do. and they can do a lot. I mean, to Donovan's point, in a commercial trucking or a local delivery space, we're seeing real world applications for the technology. We're seeing a handful of different markets with a couple of different companies that we partner with doing low speed shared use electrified either fixed route or semi-fixed route shuttles to actually meet real demand need. And then we're seeing applications, particularly in that kind of level 2, soon maybe level 3 automation. So the driver is still engaged in that task and responsible for overseeing the operation of the vehicle. But maybe something like a low-speed adaptive cruise control in traffic, or a higher speed adaptive cruise control on the highway. So we're seeing these applications actually happening today, but people are recognizing that automated vehicles are not this panacea. It's not going to be one vehicle that travels everywhere and does everything and solves all of our problems, but that there are specific use cases where this technology is actually going to be applied and can have some material impact on the way that cities are structured, the way that we receive, deliver goods, the way that we move from A to B. And then smart cities is the other one. I think, smart cities as a buzzword has been around for a long time, but we're really just beginning to see cities, really realizing the potential for this sort of a technology and applications and trends. And what I mean by that is that we're seeing cities who are, either have learned tough lessons or watched other cities kind of struggle through this. How do I get smarter? And early days, smarter, I think, was equated with fancy new technology. So investments in shiny new things. And what we're realizing is that smarter really comes down to doing more with less. And part of the key to that is just becoming more sophisticated about how you use data, how you prioritize, how you leverage the tools around you, and how you actively will continue as a city continue to play the traditional role of moderator in a transportation space with the sorts of new innovations and mobility trends that we're seeing on a yearly, if not monthly basis now. The environment is rapidly shifting now, and cities are being forced to be smarter to try to keep up.
Yeah, I would say that those are all very exciting, cool things on the horizon.
And realistic.
Right. I mean, we're right there. I grew up in a car family. My father worked for General Motors for 35 years, and I've always loved cars. I've always loved driving. And I recently, it was just a few months ago, was in a fancy new Cadillac that had that kind of quasi.
Super Cruise.
Yeah. And it was pretty hot. Like literally, it
awesome.
It can tell if your eyes are closed or if you're distracted. I mean, but if you set it and you kind of, it really will drive the car for you. It finds the lines and you set cruise, and you cannot just, pull your phone up and answer email but you really are. I mean, it was a really cool experience, and I was like, give me more of that.
So what, and Avery, maybe you could tell us, for our listeners, what level would that be? Because as to Britt's point, there are portions of autonomous technology that are out there that we don't call it that, but what level do we really see that's legal out there in automobiles now?
So it's a bit of there's kind of two answers to that question. For a vehicle that a consumer could buy today, we're beginning to get into some level 3 vehicles. Super Cruise would be an example there. And that's characterized by there are periods of time where the driver is needs to continue to monitor the vehicle and be available to take back over control at any point. So Super Cruise. But may be able to take their, let's say, hands off the wheel for a period of time. The level 4, which would be a vehicle that does not require human attention, but has limited operational domains where they can function. So that could be a geofence. That could be it can only operate in certain weather conditions, light conditions, etc. Would be a level 4 vehicle, and then level 5 is kind of, I think, the kind of mythical unicorn of the automated vehicle world, which is a vehicle that can drive anywhere, anytime, in any conditions with no need for any sort of a human backup.
Is that flying through the air too? Or is that might be level 6 or 7?
Yeah, that takes it from a flat 2-dimensional level to a third-dimensional level. I haven't seen exist yet.
Not yet. We're getting there though, right?
But I'm glad you brought that up, Avery, and you made it more realistic, because we have heard about it since I've been with the Institute the last 4 or 5 years, that it's going to happen. It's going to make life so much better, and everyone's going to have it, and it'll actually reduce traffic, which we don't think that's the case. But you're making it something that is realistic. Consumers actually have portions of it now. And as you said, it's not going to be the end all to everything. But do you think that heavy duty will be where we'll see it really thrive for a long time before it even goes back down to consumers?
Maybe, I think is the answer. We are beginning to see some testing and some early deployments for heavy duty, highly automated trucks on public highways. But there's a lot of challenges there as well, as there are with deployment in a passenger vehicle or a deployment in a shared use fleet. The difference with a commercial vehicle is that it's a whole lot easier to return the sort of to get the sort of ROI that's necessary to justify that sort of investment in a vehicle. I mean, the technology is still very expensive.
Right.
That's part of the reason why many aren't convinced that you or I would ever own a level 4, level 5 vehicle. For a vehicle that sits 90+% of the time idle in our driveway or at work. The idea of spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on that system is probably a bridge too far for many, particularly when this may be paired with applications for shared use of these vehicles that actually drives costs far down. So I think it's a challenge to think about these vehicles being the higher levels of these vehicles being actively deployed to consumers in a personally owned vehicle anytime soon. But for commercial trucks, where you can operate these vehicles far more than under 10% of the time, and there are clear directives as far as cost per mile that are oftentimes somewhat obscured for a traditional motorist, an individual motorist, but are actively tracked and actively understood in the commercial trucking sectors. The value proposition comes to life a lot earlier within that industry versus application for consumer-owned passenger vehicles.
Very good. It's the tip of the iceberg, almost, our conversation. I wish we had more time, but I appreciate you making the time for us. And if our listeners want to know more about it and get involved more with INRIX, where can they find more information?
INRIX.com is great, and you can find me on Twitter at Avery Ash.
Thanks, Avery, and thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.